Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's roundtable for A Life Designed. Jonathan, it's love to see you in your red there out in California, and Brian, you're green for some reason in Sri Lanka. So
I'm in a club.
we're colorful today.
Just kidding.
You have some festive lights and they cast a green glow. Is that right in your cafe there?
Yeah, this is top of the line Sri Lankan ambience right here, okay?
Yes,
You can
yes.
see there's blue lights as well.
Yeah, well,
So
okay. Yes. Well, and you had been out in the open air, except it started to rain, and that doesn't really work with a laptop in the rain.
exactly. Yes.
Well, it's wonderful to join you for this topic this week, somatic release and energy work. And the word somatic has been popularized over the last 5 years or so, is my guess, with therapists and body work people, with coaches. And so I thought we would dive into it a little bit today and talk about, from a coaching perspective, how we handle somatic release, what happens, and why it's perfectly okay for it to happen. So, okay, here we go into sharing. Share. Okay, here we go. Share. All right. Present. Ta-da! Can you guys see that?
Now I can.
Okay. Brian, are you able to see it? Okay, good. So somatic release and energy work is our topic of discussion today. And we may have Zian join us in a few minutes as his schedule permits. We have some other people out of town this week. So it's a small group. We all get to talk a lot. Okay, so this just describes a little bit about what do they mean when they say somatic release. And so commonly it's tears. We have clients that have tears that are released. And then sometimes memories of trauma or a difficult experience are released. Sometimes physical pain in the body is released, and sometimes it's all of the above. So I've had each of these things happen individually, and I've had them happen all together. So that's somatic release. So I have a quote to share, and I shared this on our A Life Designed Instagram page, I think. It's a quote from an American author who wrote the famous book, Little Women. And the quote is, "Don't cry so bitterly, but remember this day and resolve with all your soul that you will never know another like it." So this quote reminded me that we have tears that we shed in life. We have difficulties that come our way, but then we pick ourselves up and then we've cried our tears. And especially in the world of coaching, we begin to take steps to begin again, to move in a new direction, to complete whatever has been finished, and then to enter into the new beginning of what's next. Okay, I have memes. I'm not going to forget my memes this week. We have memes. So the first one says, "What state do you live in?" And they say, "The state of constant anxiety." So for some people who come to get help, it's like, I'm anxious all the time. And generally with those clients, there's probably a moment of somatic release in there somewhere when we work with them. And in our second one, our meme, it says they're carrying this big rock of past trauma. And then on top of that, we add bad news and a pandemic and stress. And then they're moving along and they have a minor inconvenience, like some uneven pavement. And then they fall apart. This really small problem. And they fall apart. And the brain says, "I think you're overreacting." But really, it's just the last straw. It's not the minor inconvenience, it's the last straw. Okay, then this is for coaches, and it's funny. This last Kermit meme, appropriate for Brian, who looks like Kermit today. This is for therapists. They share memes. And Kermit says, you know, he's thinking as in front of his laptop, like he's doing a Zoom session, gives people advice when I can't even handle my own problems. So sometimes it feels like, are they expecting us to be perfect? Because we're not perfect. So anyway, let me pin you back up, Brian, so we can see you. And hey, so yeah, somatic release, tears or emotional memories of trauma or difficulty or loss or grief can pop up when we're doing coaching sessions or hypnosis sessions or Sedona method sessions. And I'll tell you the story of one person who we were doing executive coaching about how she could navigate some challenges in her workplace. And we got into our last session and we completed our work. And she said, well, we have a few minutes. I wonder if I could work on something outside of the workplace. Of course, we did. And she said, I don't understand about forgiveness. I wasn't raised in the United States. I was raised in another country, and there isn't a big thing about forgiveness like there is here. But I think it would be good for me if I learned how. And so I said, okay. And we went through an energy work process called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping. And that's energy work, and it leads often to a somatic release. And so she had a memory that came up. Every time she thought of that memory, she had a physical pain in her back. And this had been going on for 14 years. And she couldn't relieve the pain, and she couldn't get rid of the memory, and she couldn't forgive the person where the incident happened. And so in 20 minutes, this is how energy work works. This is how hypnosis works, Sedona method, other methods too. We released the pain around the memory. We forgave the person who was doing the best they could, but she was a very different person 14 years ago, and she didn't have the perception to understand what her adult mind could understand now about that situation. And the pain was no longer in her back. And so when you have somatic release with energy work, it's just sort of clears things out of your energy field. Your experience changes. And, you know, jumping off from our amazing slides and from that little story, Brian, would you like to start with the Sedona method or the kind of somatic release that maybe you've seen in doing energy work?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has to have some kind of practice they do, energy work or meditation or inner engineering or something. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Jonathan, but
Mm.
you got to have some kind of consciousness process that you do to kind of straighten yourself out, I think.
Mm.
And yeah, so I mean, I show people Sedona method, which is a way to kind of psychologically like move through some emotions and kind of clear them out, and it'll create a very fast shift.
Mhm.
Um, but your emotions, your thoughts, it connects directly to your body.
Mhm.
Like Louise Hayes
Louise.
wrote that book. I forget what it's called, but she
Mhm.
had different affirmations that people could do,
Yes.
and it would alleviate the symptoms of different diseases or chronic pain or things that they had, because there's
Mhm.
always some kind of emotional blockage or
Mhm.
chakra blockage or something
Mhm.
behind like physical, problems that we have. And some people I've started to become more aware of this recently. Some people get emotions like stuck in their body, like
Yep.
stuck in their nervous system. It's
Yep.
not just a psyche thing. It's
Right.
not just like mind or like an abstract sense of emotions. Like they have like patterns that are like repeating in their nervous system. Like all the time they're
Yeah.
in fear, or all the time they're anxious, and the nervous system
Mhm.
is constantly telling them like
Mhm.
danger, like you have to be ready, you have to be ready,
Mhm.
danger, danger. And if that's going on all the time,
Mhm.
that's going to create chronic stress, and I mean you're like, it's just not going to be good, right? So if that's what someone has, if it's really like in the body, like the body's in fight or flight adrenaline all the time,
Mhm.
where you have to do some kind of somatic release. You got to relieve that tension,
Mhm.
somehow reset, regulate your nervous system, your vagus nerve.
Mhm.
And there's lots of different somatic, work you can do. Like
Mhm.
some people do just literally like shaking out their body to just kind of release the nerves
Mhm.
and kind of loosen yourself up. Like, I mean, literally, but it relieves some of that nervous
Mhm.
tension or that anxiety or fear that people might carry. You can do something like Tai Chi,
Mhm.
because that's really more of a meditation. It's something that
Mhm.
calms down your nervous system more than it is like exercise.
Mhm.
I like doing Tai Chi sometimes. I actually think it's a really good meditation.
Mhm.
Um, but I think everyone needs some kind of practice,
Mhm.
or two or three or four to just like reset themselves, clear out negative emotions or traumas, or transmute them, or
Mhm.
some kind of way to sit with them until they feel like they've changed and they're healed. You got to have some kind of thing like that.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I have never met a massage therapist or a chiropractor that didn't have a story or two to tell about how they're doing body work for a client, and then there's this pain, and then they remember the car accident or they remember an injury, and there's trauma attached in their body to that pain. And as the body worker, a massage therapist, cranial sacral therapy, chiropractor works that section of the body, they get to work out the memory of the trauma as well. It is a release. And so, but Jonathan, to invite you into this topic, sometimes people have a barrier around what this situation actually is. It's invisible to them, it's clouded. Sometimes because those things happened in childhood, or, well, you had a car accident, but it was 5 years ago and your shoulder's jacked up, but that's just what happened. They don't realize that there might be trauma that's there that could be released, like the possibility of that is invisible to them. So when you work with clients in hypnosis, do you uncover things that you could say, hey, we could energetically work through this? How is it for you, Jonathan?
Yes, I actually agree 1,000,000%. It's true. There's no question. Mind, body are connected.
Mm,
Um, so
mhm.
let's say something happened long time ago. You forget. You were in your bicycle, and then all of a sudden, and then, uh, next thing you know, it's still there, but you forgot about it. But it's still there. Let's say on your knees.
Mhm,
Time passes, and then like there's something that if you don't like pay attention to it, it's going to come at some point. Your body is going to tell you like I need help.
mhm.
So when I was, for example, when I was training to become a alchemical hypnotherapist,
Yes.
I remember I was actually, there's a section of the training specifically designed for somatic healing.
Mhm. I think we lost him for a minute there. We'll let him pick back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who's doing energy work that doesn't have this happen, because it's the way the human body is made. I like the way that you and Jonathan both have an
It
understanding
looks
about.
disconnected.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Just a minute, I'll let you back in. But I know how Sadhguru with Isha talks about the body technology. That there is a
Mhm.
system for how the body operates. Every person's body operates in a standard system. And
Mhm.
so I know, Jonathan, the work that you do with people with alchemical hypnotherapy, you address those things that are true for everyone in a body. Did we lose him again?
We might have.
Yeah. So Mercury might be in retrograde.
Ooh. So we can talk until he comes back.
Okay, good. Yeah, he's gonna try
Um,
again. Mhm,
yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I mean, the body, Sadhguru talks about it as a gadget.
mhm,
So yeah, you know, figuring out how the gadget works and it's fully connected to your mind and your spirit and all this stuff.
Mhm.
Again, that's why we have to work on healing from all angles. And that's what ALD wants to do.
Yes,
We want to help you heal physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally,
yes,
financially, relationship wise. Like you got to
because
hit
it's
these
all
things all in.
interconnected.
I
Mhm.
think a bad relationship can make you sick.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, because it's all energy. Like it's
Yes.
all, you know,
Mhm.
I mean, it's all the connection, the energies, the forces that are manifesting reality anyways.
Yeah. Well,
So
one of the
I think,
things
yeah,
I was going to say, one of the things we notice with people that we work with who've begun a healing process of some kind, you know, they're just going to improve their work circumstance or their money or their spiritual experience, whatever it is, it always leads to other things. There's always a domino effect. We find that they're more peaceful because now they're more devotional. We find that they're more grateful because they're practicing gratitude. We find they clean up their diet. We find they spend less time around toxic people. These things are just knock-on effects. And it's because everything is connected. And so when you heal one part of you,
mhm,
it impacts other parts of you. Would you say
yeah,
you found that with clients too?
yes, absolutely.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
I'm just
What
saying,
was
do
that?
you say you find that too? When they start to pull the thread on healing,
Oh,
it
yeah,
opens up
yeah.
areas in many parts of their lives where they're like, I don't want to spend time with that person anymore. Or I think it's time to look for a
Oh,
new
yeah.
job. They don't appreciate me there. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's all connected. I mean, definitely as you change, like it's gonna change your body, it's gonna change your relationships, it's gonna change your job. Like it's, you know, that's why I kind of think it's hard to be spiritual, like when you're in a relationship. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that, but if you are gonna be working on growth a lot, your partner has to be doing that. Otherwise, you're gonna leave them behind. You know, and people talk about this, like I've heard other coaches and speakers talk about this. Um, yeah, like if one person's on a personal growth or spiritual growth journey or whatever you want to call it, they're in a relationship with someone who's not, it becomes skew lines, you know, like you start drifting
Yeah.
apart and it's not going to work. So
We call
I
that
would say that,
vibration separation, right? The energy is just not aligned anymore.
yeah, the consciousness is just, it's different states of
Mhm,
being. So it's like, it's, you know, these
mhm.
lines aren't going to meet up, you know, they just go different directions. But, what's up, Zan, man? We've been talking about energy work, somatic stuff. What up, Zane
Hey,
buddy?
nice to see you. Yeah, we've had Jonathan off and on. His iPhone
Okay.
is giving us
Yeah,
trouble.
he's disconnecting a little bit,
And
but
it was nice because he was in a bright red sweatshirt and Brian is green today. So
Mm.
he's in a
yeah,
very
it's
high-end beach hut in Sri Lanka and they have green light effects.
Christmas came early this year.
That's right. They have green light effects, so he's having a Kermit experience. So, but yeah, we'd love to talk to you about somatic experiences. One of the things we've said so far is that, you know, the inner engineering training that Sadhguru offers that Brian and Jonathan have been through, they talk about the technology of being in a body, that bodies are structured the same for everyone in a body. You know, the mind, body, spirit connection is the same for everyone. And so while your life experience is different, the skin suit you wear is built the same for pretty much everyone. And so if people are talking with a coach or a therapist or doing body work and they have a somatic experience, that releases old memory of trauma or difficulty or causes tears and they're not even sure where the tears are coming from. This is common to humans because it's how the body works. It's not that they're wrong or bad or have extra junk. This is just how it works. Do you want to speak to kind of when you work with someone who has a somatic release, that it's okay that they have tears, or okay that they're reminded of pain in their back or their, you know, left leg or something, and now remember the accident or the trauma? Go ahead, Zian,
Yeah,
and welcome.
yeah. And that's I think you kind of touched on it without directly saying it, but emotions are stored in the body, and not just emotions, but like the experiences, the sensations that come from those experiences and those memories. And you know, when a person, whatever it, however they release that, whether it's crying, whether it's a display of, yeah, whether a display of anger, and even with movement, they're releasing it by expressing it. So the emotions can't get released if we don't find some outlet through which to express these things. And they will continue showing up in behaviors, actions, choices, and belief systems, unconscious belief systems behind our actions and choices.
Jonathan's
Cool.
back.
Yes, my phone all of a sudden went into this SOS only, and I didn't have the Wi-Fi connected, so it was the whole thing. But
Oh, no,
I'm
no
back now.
problem. Well, listen, Zian has joined us, but I'm going to let you finish your thought, Jonathan, because you were in the middle, explaining how in your alchemical hypnosis training, there was literally a section about somatic experiences, and then we'll come back to Zian.
Yes, there was this introduction. That was the first time that I came in contact with the inner healer, uh, which I was completely unaware of. But it looks and it seems like we all have an inner healer, a part of our personalities that knows everything when it comes to the body. It's like it's an intelligence within ourselves that we can connect to. So let's say, for example, I remember there was this girl with pain, and she had like a pain in her hips or whatever. Um, so what happened was during the training, I had her like lay down, and then after some process, I introduced her to the inner healer, and then from there, this like entity takes over. It's like a some kind of like possession, I would say. That's kind of how it looks like. And then the person it starts like moving their body in ways that you've never seen before, because they're like it's like a twisting and turning, but like they're just doing it or like organically. They're not thinking about it. So they're just, it's like a realignment. I'm pretty sure that's what a chiropractor does for you anyways. So instead of this guy doing it for you, that's pretty much this this intelligence within yourself doing it for you. So at the end, yes, like you were saying, sometimes there's tears come up. Oh, there's a lot of, it's like a weight out of your shoulders. It's like you know, that kind of release, and it does happen. Also, I noticed when Brian mentioned inner engineering, I noticed that while doing those kinds of practices, let's say like inner engineering, which is a basic um, body-mind connection that you're doing, it's very powerful. Every time you do it, if you do it right, you can tell, let's say you move your body in a certain way. By the time you're done with those simple movements, you can feel the release not only of physical pain, but also there's like because of the physical movement that you made, there is also like a mental release. It's like a getting rid of a lot of stuff. So I would say by releasing stuff physically, you also get rid of unnecessary mental baggage, and vice versa. Like it goes both ways. Um,
Oh, very
but
good.
yes,
Yeah.
there is an inner healer that during hypnosis you can be introduced to. That is something that I can do, but my area of expertise again is working with the higher self,
Yes.
especially with men and relationships. But I can do that for someone if they really like need to. I can definitely
Well, and certainly someone's higher self can guide them if they need healing in an area, because the higher self is like the top dog. So yeah. Well, so Zian, to come back to you, sorry to interrupt you there, but I wanted to have you share about the different kinds of way people express. And so sometimes for men, I've noticed that the emotion they're permitted to have in society is anger. You know, if their first response to something is anger, it's because they don't really have permission to be sad or to express grief or confusion. So they usually default in a first reaction to anger, and because it's permitted. But as we work with clients, that expression of anger, whatever expression they're doing, physically moving their body, whether they have tears, whether they have anger, this is the headline news of a coach who's working with them to say, oh, there's something going on here that we're working through. Do you want to speak to that, Zian?
Yeah. Sometimes there is sadness beneath anger,
Mhm.
as you said, because that's what's culturally permitted. It's not culturally appropriate for men to go around being mopey and sad
Mhm.
and looking vulnerable and weak.
Mhm.
But on the flip side, it's okay for women to express that sadness but not be angry.
Yes.
So we're polarized in these ways where certain displays of emotions are allowed for males and females, but not one or the other.
Yes.
But anger isn't sadness isn't always underneath a layer of anger. But it can, and we can find out it can be there, and we can find out what's underneath that anger, and that there's more to it, or that the anger is maybe a form of an earlier form of protection.
Yeah.
That where violence was needed to protect this individual from further self-harm by external sources.
Yes.
And what's great about somatic therapy is that we uncover the meaning and the intelligence behind that anger, and what purpose it served earlier in life, if any. And Jonathan and Brian call it inner engineering or inner healing. I like that's the first time I'm hearing those terms. I just refer to it as intelligence. This is these emotions, these sensations, these things that get trapped inside of us throughout the course of our lives. This is the intelligence embedded within our body, and there's always something that these things communicate about us.
Yes.
What we've done with those emotions and why we haven't processed them, and the ways that we've avoided them to prevent further overload on our nervous systems.
I really appreciate that. You know, I sometimes tease clients when I work with them that say coaches can be looked at kind of funny because we know that the breakdown leads to the breakthrough. So when people say, I can't cope anymore, I've had enough, we go, yeah, okay, let's get started. You know, this is good news. Yes. And they're like, but wait, I'm telling you, this is like, I'm at maximum, you know, non-ability to handle this. Fantastic. You know, we're finally ready to put a bunch of stuff down. We're finally ready to just answer this call that's been in a quiet voice for a long time, which is now screaming at you. Great. You know, so
yes
people that don't do this work are like, you're happy that I'm really having a hard time? Absolutely, because that means we're ready to solve it. We're ready to set it down. You're finally ready to kind of deal with it.
Yes, like that it's like you said, there's that aspect of them that's screaming out for help and doing so in distress, and that's the point at which you realize that their change does need to happen, because most of the time most of us aren't we're not in touch with that subtle sense of intuition where we hear that voice when it's at its lowest volume, and only when it starts screaming out do we actually notice it, and we start paying attention to it, and we stop denying it, and we
Right.
start feeding it exactly what it needs for us to grow.
Yeah. You know, Brian and I have different podcasts that we listen to, and I was listening to one recently from Allison Coe, and she does BQH, which I do also. And it's a little bit like, but not exactly like what Jonathan does with his alchemical hypnotherapy. But it is a way to kind of sneak past the conscious mind and let the unconscious speak what's going on. You just kind of come in like a side door, and then they can speak more freely about what's going on. And you know, she said the gift of these problems is it points us in the direction of where the healing needs to happen. And so when you have these negative catalysts or these negative things that happen, this is our place of our next growth. And it's now been brought to our attention. And so the client was telling her, well, can't I just go to a place? I want to live in a reality where I'm on easy mode. And Allison said, no, you don't. No, you don't. It'll take you 10,000 years to make any progress at all if you live on easy mode. You need these weeds to pop up in your garden from time to time, so you do the work that you need to do. So
Yeah.
your problems are a gift, even though in the moment of the problem, it doesn't seem like that. In the solution of the problem, you absolutely always find a gift. So Brian, do you have any feedback about that? Like, yay, problems.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll talk about a little bit of my kind of abstract views here, but I think we're all destined to become an infinite consciousness, which is sort of my view of
Mhm.
what the source of creation is or what God is. I think it's an infinite consciousness.
Mhm.
So I actually think the universe is designed in such a way that you're not allowed to remain a small personality. Like it's actually configured that way.
Mhm.
So you will be pushed to expand.
Mhm.
That's actually like built into the design, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Um, I could do more reasoning about that, but we don't have to go into long arguments that I have about stuff. But
Well, I'll
um,
interrupt you for a second to
yeah,
say
so
that you can be pushed in
okay.
a negative way. You can also be pushed in a positive way. You can come across a book. You can come across an alchemical hypnotherapist and be curious. You could come across teachings like Sadhguru. So there are positive and negative catalysts, but the pushing, the catalysts are always present. So please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it depends on how we define positive and and negative. But I understand what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, I, I find this interesting. Again, it's kind of abstract here, but in the law of one, it talks about how you guys don't have to believe in this, but in the law of one, it talks about how there were universes that were designed that were just really pleasant, and nobody made any evolution or personal growth. Like everyone just didn't care. So there was no like impetus to return back to the source because in this perspective, in this understanding,
Mhm.
source manifests outward and then everything returns back to the original source eventually.
Mhm.
That's the understanding of this kind of perspective of
Mhm.
existence. And it's funny, that's alluded to in The Matrix as well. There's the movie The Matrix.
Mhm.
There's a point where one of the agent, like Smith, says, um, originally the Matrix was designed as a paradise, but humanity rejected it. So yeah, I mean, it's there is that kind of thing. If you if you look at something Ramana Maharshi said, actually there was a quote where Yogananda asked him a question. Yogananda actually asked him the long-standing human question, which philosophers and theologians can never seem to solve, which is why is there suffering? Why does God allow this if there is a God? And his answer, he just said, suffering is the way to God. And I kind of agree with that. Although I think everyone should try to be happy and enjoy life to the max. But when you end up suffering, that is when you end up making your biggest growth because people don't volunteer for that, you know? Like nobody like volunteers for boot camp, you know, unless like they know they're getting a big payday at the end or something. If there's no payday guaranteed, you're not gonna go do that. So you kind of have to be pushed into it a little bit. But I want to talk about somatic stuff a little bit
Release.
more. I think Rolfing is a great example of this, which is like, if anyone doesn't know, it's like really, really deep tissue massage to the point that it's very, very painful. And it will like force you to cry and have tears. And people, yeah, like if it'll force you to cry because it's that painful. When people feel those tears, instantly memories get triggered of like painful moments of traumas. Like it's actually forcing someone to go in there just from the physical pain. And people feel like some of the pressure, some of the weight of that trauma kind of releasing. I don't know if it like fully heals it, maybe it doesn't, but they feel some pressure relief from that. So I think that really speaks to the mind-body connection. The fact that you'll instantly go to traumatic memories when someone's really applying consistent pain to like your back. That really, like, to me, that's like proof of kind of how memories are stored in the body there. But yeah, also I think the guy that me and you watch now sometimes, Mom, that guy Satya Speaks on YouTube, another like Indian type guru guy. He was saying that one of the things he's experienced is if you actually just completely let yourself feel all your feelings and you have no resistance and there's no filter, it can be shocking how relaxing that is. There can actually be a shock because like you have this sense of it. How is it this easy to be human?
Yeah.
Because most people are not allowing it to be that easy because of all the things we've been taught, all the programming, you know. And I think sometimes when people don't want to let themselves release emotions from the body or process or face emotions or work through it or whatever language you want to use around that, sometimes when people aren't letting themselves do those processes, it could be they're afraid to face it. It could be they're afraid of being judged by other people. Like there's the societal pressure, like Zian is bringing up. You could feel like, oh, if I cry, my girlfriend's going to leave me. Like maybe I'm willing to cry, but I don't want her to leave me. You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes it's the other people in our lives. We feel the judgment, the pressures from them. We might not be willing to face that. So it's like, where is the courage lacking? You might be willing to face it yourself, but you're not willing to face it with other people judging and watching. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you wouldn't mind other people judging, but you can't face it yourself. But at some point there's a failure point. There's a weak link in the chain, and we have to get past that to grow through that.
So I have another question that I'd like to address to the three of you, and that is, we've identified what somatic release is, and that humans are structured similarly, and we trap pain and emotion and trauma and memories in the body, and the body and the mind, the spirit are all connected. So we understand the landscape of that. And if we work with a coach or someone that does body work or a hypnotherapist or a spiritual program like inner engineering, we can uncover areas where this stuff is stuck and learn to release it. But the question I have for you guys to address is, let's assume a person has uncovered past trauma, gone through a process with a coach or another person to release it. They still have to live life. They still will have moments of trauma or difficulty or pain. How do we not let new stuff in? Now that we've cleared the decks of the trauma that was there or the things that needed to be released, how do we keep the upkeep? How do we not let new stuff in? Or if it comes in because we're in a car accident or some things outside of our control, how do we release it more quickly? Do you want to address, once we've done some releasing, how do we move forward in life? And these things come to us, release them immediately or not let them get stuck in the first place? Who wants to go first with that? I
Okay, I
volunteer,
can jump in.
I
Yeah,
volunteer
I
you,
can.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I can jump in. Yeah, I mean, you know, how do we deal with new experiences that can be traumatic? How do we prevent them?
Mhm,
You're kind of
mhm,
touching on all these questions. In terms of prevention, it's largely how you structure your life. So, for example, if you brought up car accidents,
mhm,
like I don't drive at this point. I drove in the U.S. obviously, drove a tow truck and a car. Um, but
mhm,
like out here, like in Thailand, I would just rent a motorbike,
mhm,
scooter or something.
mhm,
Here I'll just take little tuk-tuk taxis, which are three-wheelers. So
mhm,
like I'm not driving, so I'm never going to be responsible for a car wreck.
mhm,
I can still be in one technically,
mhm.
although those tuk-tuks are pretty sturdy, man. They got like a steel frame on them.
But they
But
drive crazy. They drive
oh yeah,
crazy.
no, they're you should never drive on these roads. I don't even. But yeah, and then as far as dealing with it, like I don't know, it's interesting. The I think timing is interesting when you talk about dealing with stuff. There's how you deal with stuff in the moment,
Mhm, mhm,
then there's how you process it afterwards, and those can be different.
mhm,
Like
mhm,
in the moment, you might have to handle something a certain way. You
mhm,
might have to like if someone hits you, you might have to be angry and say, "Hey, I need your insurance," if they're trying to not give you the information or something.
mhm,
No, you got to give me your insurance. Like you got to find a way to handle that. But then later on, you got to make sure you release any trauma from the experience or you work through it or you feel your way through it.
mhm,
Again, whatever language people want to use on this.
mhm,
Um, somehow you handle it
mhm,
in a mature way and you get past it or grow through it or learn from it or,
mhm,
whatever the thing is. But Sadhguru has a good quote on this, which is interesting. And he was like, don't wish for an easy life. Wish for the strength and the character and the skill to handle anything that comes your way. And that's another way to look at it because if you have that,
mhm,
you're golden, right?
mhm,
I mean, I'm paraphrasing. That's not his exact quote, but he said
mhm,
something to that effect.
mhm,
If you have that, you're golden. And then
mhm,
you can go through life very courageously, like he does.
mhm,
He said you can, I mean, at that point, you can just live without fear. You
mhm,
just do whatever you want to do. You're not worried about anything because you just deeply trust you can handle whatever comes.
mhm,
So that's a extraordinary level of confidence and trust in oneself that I think
mhm,
is kind of foreign to most human beings. But I think Sadhguru is a good example of that in terms of how he lives.
mhm,
And yeah, so there's all these different strategies, right? You could use or processes or methods. It's about finding what's best for you. And that's
yes.
what I want to bring to this community. I want us all to be able to use different methods and
Mhm,
share and learn from each other. Like I learn from all you guys every time we talk.
mhm, mhm,
And so it's, hopefully we'll get more people in here, get some more coaches, get some people joining the community over time.
mhm,
But for me, like even just doing these sessions and me speaking my points,
mhm,
like I grow from that. I learn from that.
mhm,
So I also think personal growth is a fantastic strategy to
mhm,
address what you're saying. Like, how do you deal with future problems?
mhm,
Grow now.
mhm, mhm,
Like, just be growing now.
mhm,
If you're learning and growing and developing yourself now,
mhm,
whatever comes your way later, you'll be like, I'm good. Like I'm ready.
mhm,
I'm ready for it.
mhm.
So that's my take on
Well,
these things.
I appreciate that. I think there's a personal responsibility component. Once you've learned that things could get stuck and get released, now you have to pay attention. Has something gotten stuck that needs to be released? I will accept my personal responsibility that whether you're journaling, whether you're praying, whether
Mhm.
you're in meditation, whether you have a therapist or a coach to talk through, hey, this thing happened at work, in my relationship, whatever. And I'm noticing this is my reaction to it, and I want to process and work through it. So if you have personal responsibility that says, when these things come up now, this is how I maintain my equilibrium, this is how I manage, my move forward. so that I don't carry it to the next 10 years. I set it down as soon as possible. Zian, go ahead. You have a thought.
Yeah, like, so somatic release, and the way that's done, it is highly dependent on the individual. It's really like Brian said, it's what is best for that person as an individual. And there's a number of techniques that some of us might use and overlap with the level of effectiveness per individual. But it's really a subjective process, and it's about tapping into what you're feeling, what you were feeling at the time, and then what you're feeling now afterwards, and discovering and exploring all the subtle energies and emotions underneath what you're feeling, and just developing a deeper relationship with yourself and your body, and becoming intuitive in that process. It's like a muscle. When you use this sense of intelligence within your body, and the more often you use it, the stronger it becomes, the easier it becomes to facilitate emotional releases by your own method, without using like a coach, a practitioner, or a therapist. You understand how to do this for yourself if you are facilitating this by yourself. Some, like a car crash, that's a tough one. I wouldn't know what to say. You might need to go to like a somatic movement coach or something of that caliber. Maybe some physical therapy. I don't know. Engage in some kind of somatic movement, yoga, even grounding, just walking on the ground barefoot, or dance, or something of the equivalent. But as I said, the process is highly subjective for each individual.
I appreciate that. I know, Jonathan, when you teach people through your hypnotherapy process about working with their higher self, you've given them tools that will take them forward should these sort of things intervene in their life again. Do you want to speak to that, how you offer that guidance for now you know how to do these things?
Yes. So basically, once they get in contact with this intelligence that is within them, and then everybody's higher self has a different name. It looks completely different. It's not like something that it's like, oh, it has to look like this and it's going to be like this. Like, it for everyone is completely different. It might be just like a light or something. So, but the main point is, once they connect to this intelligence, if they actually take some responsibility, now that they have been introduced to it, they can actually, I would recommend to make like a daily practice of taking some time and just being in touch with it. Let's say you have a difficult, I don't like to call them problems because it sounds like horrible. I like the situations better. But because words matter. So if you tell problems in your mind, it will freak it. I don't know, in my experience, the way you describe something makes a huge impact. So let's say you're facing a difficult situation that, with the level of awareness that you have, you cannot get over it, or like you cannot pass that, like a video game, you cannot pass that level.
Okay.
Then you get in touch with this dimension that is actually, it's part of you. You're just not connected all the time. But let's say you take some time, you connect with this thing, and then the answer will appear, and it reveals itself. Some people have used some fancy words in the past with some books, and they made it a little poetic, and then it becomes like a religion. But at the end, it's the same thing. It's the only way out. It's in. That's it. and it helps for everything. So it's true. So yes, also what you guys were saying about growing so that you're like prepared, that's key, because sometimes we forget and we get comfortable, and then you're like, and that, let's say somebody gets wanted to get rich. I've seen this many times, and then they're rich, but now they're like fat and useless. But they have I've met them. They have a lot of money. So, but now they cannot even move. So I'm like, it's great to take small amounts of growth every day, like pushing yourself. You don't have to do it like so extreme, because there's different levels of personalities, but just like a little bit, so that when the time comes, because it's inevitable, it always comes. So instead of being like a slap from the universe, it can just be like a tap. Like otherwise, it feels like a fucking tsunami instead of like just riding a wave peacefully.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I remember that Yogananda, as you mentioned here, would say life is like a movie, but when you're in the theater and so entranced in the story, you forget you're not in the story. The story is happening on the screen projected in front of you. You could get up and leave the theater. You don't have to stay in the story. So if you can develop the ability to observe what's happening around you, to observe what's
Also,
happening to you, you have enough distance that maybe you can make other decisions instead of feeling like it's all on top of you. Go ahead, Jonathan.
yeah, you reminded me of something that is sometimes I forget the little details of how I became the human that I am right now, and it was all about the little details. For example, most people they go to the movie theater. I've done it. I still do it sometimes. But let's say you go to the movie theater, you start watching the movie. You forget that what you're watching, your body is actually reacting to like a screen. And the way I see it, I don't know if they have done studies on this or not. I don't actually care. I'm just talking from my personal experience. Is you go to the movie theater, you watch a horror movie, and it's extremely important because it happens every time. You can get traumatized by something that didn't even happen to you, and you can actually feel it. For example, when the sound of the nails on like on the board, you hear that and you feel it. Like it's like you can actually feel it. You can imagine cutting let's say you have a board, a knife, and a lemon. You cut the lemon. You imagine putting some drops of the lemon in your tongue, and it's going to have a reaction. So now imagine like blood all over the place, machine guns, bombs. That's why people get like desensitized. Now they're walking around, a car explodes, they're like, oh yeah, like the video game. It's like normal. It's like they're desensitized. They're extremely desensitized. Uh, and it if you don't take care of it, it's not good when time passes because it accumulates. And it's
No,
also the not being like showing emotions and stuff. I wanted to also for whoever is going to be watching this, it might be helpful. Um, let's say you're a man and you're in a relationship and you want to like for whatever reason your dog died or your father died or your mother died and you are in a vulnerable state. I will say yes, you can be vulnerable, but do not do it with your wife or your girlfriend. Like go with your male friends and go out with them and have a chat with them or like with your therapist, with your coach. But do not. It's not that you can't because she's gonna be like, oh yeah, of course. But there is something ingrained in the female's biology, even though she's going to be supportive. Part of her, she's gonna be like, this one cries. They cannot avoid it. So I would say yes, we can be vulnerable, and if something happens, it's okay. But just don't do it with her. Go with your friends.
Well, think about the impact it has on relationships. And I we're going to share some songs, and I'm just going to go around and get final thoughts and how to get a hold of people. But I don't know if you guys had any songs around this, but one song that I found was one from Sheryl Crow, and it's called Can't Cry Anymore. And it's, you know, she's just done now. She's done all the crying she can do. She's at the end. She's at the bottom of the crying bucket. It's now empty. She's done all the crying she could do. And in the song, she talks about her brother being a heroin addict, and she just broke up with a guy. And because it's kind of a country song, she says, I broke up with you and then I stole your car and drove to Texas because we were through. So, you know, but can't cry anymore. You get to a point where, okay, it's done. You know, I've processed the grief. I've done all the crying I need to do to understand that there's a point at which it's done. And then there's another song, and now I'm forgetting the title of it. Let me get the title of it. Hang on. Escape. Let's see. Okay. It's called Start Over from the Afters. And in the lyrics, it talks about, and we'll post these at the bottom along with all of the references we've made here. In the lyrics, it talks about how you fell on your face and then you got back up and you started over. And things went to hell and it was really hard. And then you got back up and you started over. So from a coaching perspective, you know, we have trauma, we have difficulty, and then we start over. We turn the page and we begin again because life goes on. And so we have to have that personal responsibility to develop the resilience and then maybe learn the tools that work for us individually. We've had a difficulty, we've had a challenge, we've had a situation, and this is how we process through it and then started over or kept going. So these experiences happen and then they're done and we move on. So coaches can help you move on if you're having trouble moving on. And then learn yourself, your own process. This is how I'll move on in the future. These are the tools that work for me. So Brian, any final thoughts and then how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, there's a lot that was said there. I'm trying to think of what I wanted to say now. Why don't you come back to me? 'Cause I
Okay,
sort of
good.
there's
Either
too
one
much,
of you
yeah.
want to share how to get a hold of you or have some final thoughts? Zian?
I actually want to go back to what Jonathan said about a response being ingrained in the female biology where they are adverse to men displaying vulnerability. That's actually not part of female biology. That is a response that is ingrained in each and every one of us through our cultural experience and not having experienced a loving relationship between father and daughter. And that's where that usually emanates, because when a father shows up mentally, emotionally, and physically for his daughters, then he knows how to reflect that compassion. She can reflect that back within herself and she can give that to other people. But when a father is emotionally distant, and he wasn't there, or he was neglectful to some degree, then that neglect or that lack of compassion and love and stability, it manifests as those kind of expressions where a woman shows disdain for a man who makes himself vulnerable. So she hasn't learned how to be vulnerable in her own skin. And then she doesn't know how to hold space for that when her significant other displays that level of vulnerability.
I do think that it's culturally embedded, but I do, you know, in terms of roles about strength and about protection in a male role and about compassion and emotional vulnerability in a female role, a common thing you hear is the first time I saw my husband cry was holding our newborn child. And it's very common in hospitals that a man is holding his newborn child and unbeknownst to him, tears are running down his face. it's a positive somatic experience. It's not on purpose. He's just so filled with love and joy that he has this experience in his body while he's holding this baby. And he also has feelings like, I will slay every dragon, I will make a mountain of money. What do I have to do to protect my child that's holding in my arms for the first time? And and tears running down the face. And it's not uncommon to say the only time or the first time I saw my husband cry was when our daughter or our son was put in his arms for the first time. And then this reaction happens. So yeah, I think with different individuals, relationships, of course, it's different, but we do have cultural norms that we talked about. So Zian, how do people get a hold of you?
So they can get a hold of me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and my handle for all my social medias is Heavenly Wisdom _coaching. Or you can get a hold of me at the Life Designed website, or heavenlywisdom.coaching@gmail.com.
Great. We'll put all of that in the description below so people can reach out. How about for you, Jonathan? How do people get a hold of you? And any final thoughts?
So they can get a hold of me via email. That's jonathanrcoaching@gmail.com. And also on Instagram. They can also follow that page. And also there's links inside of the Instagram page. That's Jonathan R. Coaching. And also on alifedesign.org, they can also
very good. Yeah.
join there. So any of those three works perfectly fine.
Okay, good. We'll put them below. And then for Brian, do you have some final thoughts? Or Jonathan, was there something more you wanted to say?
I'll stick to my the one that, like, if it's joyful tears, yes. But if it's the other kind, it's better for you don't.
I understand your advice. I understand. Very good. So, and for Brian, final thoughts and how to get hold of you.
I don't really have any final thoughts. Mine is just going blank now.
Okay. All right. Good. It's
yeah,
all the green light. You're just very filled with beautiful green light now. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, people can get a hold of me through alifedesign.org. And yeah, good discussion today.
Yeah, we all work with these emotional release techniques, different ones. And, we're supportive of clients who uncover in our sessions something that needs to be worked through. And I get a little giddy. I apologize in advance. Ooh, let's get that handled. But it always feels so great when the release is complete. They feel lighter. There's more breathing room in their life, in their body, in their spirit. And so good work gets done when you have the hallmark of somatic release in a session. So yes, please do visit alifedesign.org and you'll find connections for everyone below. Thanks everyone for talking about this topic this week. And we'll see you all next time.
Good to be here.
For sure.